Hello, good evening, and welcome to another Webster report on this Sunday, the 23rd of November 2025. So, officially, according to the Gregorian calendar, we've got 1 month left. That's December, Dec, which is 10, but it's our 12th month. So, even the things that we take so much for granted, we've got to ask questions about them, why this has happened, why it's changed, what is the meaning of it. If it's to cause confusion, then I think they're doing a pretty bang-up job. Again, we always seem to start off with, oh, look what's happened type thing, but there's a lot of similar things that are reoccurring now. I have got a couple of videos to bring on, Alex, but you just tipped the balance a little bit, because as you came on, you said, "Oh, I've got a bit of a scratchy throat. I don't know if I'm coming down with something." So, what's your take on that? Now, thankfully, that you woke up on time, you managed to have something to eat. What do we are coming into flu season, aren't we, Al? We just seem to have this magic flu season that comes every time we start inoculating people.
Yeah, exactly. So just make sure you get your vaccine, folks, and you'll be in tip-top health for the rest of your life, however long it isn't.
Well, that's some of the interesting stuff that I've hopefully got to show here. Let me just see which one we should start with. We'll start with this one, because there apparently there must be a tour going around Australia to speak with people, because people just know, Alex, there's something not right.
My son was 29 years old when he had the COVID vaccine, Pfizer. We have a blood clotting disorder, so we were advised to have the Pfizer. And he ended up with pericarditis that killed 25% of his heart. He was unable to, he had to stop working and became a stay-at-home dad. He had the vaccine, it was February 2022, and he ended up in hospital, and he couldn't work after that. He just wasn't able to, physically he wasn't able to do it. And then he passed away last year when he was 32, 2 days before my granddaughter was 12. Like, we're not anti-vaxxers. We really aren't. All my kids are vaccinated. But it's just how fast they came out. So that was worry.
They weren't possible.
It took 10 weeks to get his records from Canberra Hospital.
And did the doctors help you at all?
No, no one helped me.
So when you first got pericarditis, did the doctors ever attribute it to the vaccination?
They advised him not to have another vaccine.
So they knew it was a vaccination?
I've got his autopsy. His autopsy states.
No.
His autopsy states the COVID-19 vaccine as a contributing factor. It's in his autopsy.
Does the TGA have this information?
I don't know. I spoke to a solicitor and they told me that the government would never admit wrong. The only way that they're going to do that is by giving me money. And I don't want the money, but I wanted the money because I want them just to say that they know what they did. I know what killed my son. I know what killed him. I know that he was perfectly fine before he had this vaccine. My granddaughters now have no dad. Just do the right thing. Come to the government. Just do the right thing. Everyone went out there and they did all this to make everyone safe. And we all did the right thing. You've got to do the right thing. There are people out there that have been injured and died, and you've got to do the right thing. That's it.
Thank you.
So she's crying out, Alex, for people to do the right thing. Well, people did the right thing, didn't they, as far as everybody was concerned? Everybody who I knew, family and friends mainly, they were very worried about it. They had injections. Some were forced through work, and others took them because they wanted to go on holiday. So, I mean, we've got a real mix-up that's coming through here, haven't we? Hello? Looks like I've lost Alex. So I might as well jump to the next video because, like I said, we've got some things here that we could really do with looking into, because things have changed just slightly. We were talking about how religion has changed, how the Catholics are now banging a little bit of a different drum. So I think these questions are worth asking.
We have with us Sarah Brenner. She has worked very deep within the government at the FDA, and she has also worked there through the crisis.
I was the chief medical officer for diagnostics, and I was also detailed up to support White House operations during the COVID response for the Biden administration, but started during the Trump administration.
When she was working at the FDA, she did not take her COVID shot because, well, here, listen to what she said.
Well, as somebody who's in a position to know, did you choose to take any of the vaccines? Are you free to disclose that?
I did not.
And what was the reason that you chose not to get vaccinated?
It was unknown at the time what the biodistribution patterns of those products were, and in my case in particular, what the excretion would be in breast milk. That was my primary concern. And that exposure I was very concerned about.
And have events since then confirmed you in your choice?
I believe so. You must be honest with folks, right? And so transparency is a big theme.
That she didn't take her COVID shot when she was pregnant, and her reasoning for doing so has actually been confirmed. So now she knows for sure that it's a bad idea. It sounds like that's what she's saying, that it's a bad idea for women who are pregnant to take it, yet the FDA is still recommending it.
We must be honest, open, and transparent in terms of giving informed consent to patients about what the known and unknown and probable and less probable benefits and risks are of any medical intervention.
I also see a real point to this because of the cognitive dissonance that it creates, because you have one line that's saying yes, it's safe and effective and yet we're looking at one of the top doctors in the administration who knew that there was something not right about pregnant women taking it, yet it was fully promoted. It's still being promoted, Alex, and we're now getting the pushback and the feedback from real data, actual statistics, not what people have made up, like, oh, if you stay 6 feet away and you look in the other direction, or if you're in an elevator and you face the wall, everything will be fine. But that's not what's happening. But how is it that people can't see that, Alex, that the FDA is promoting all that from Operation Warp Speed under Trump going into Biden? They both administrations wanted that, yet the top people in it knew there was misgivings about it. And as she said, she's been proven right to have not taken that. But what about all the people who had them?
Have you ever had a goldfish?
I have.
So do you ever remember, I used to have a few, I used to have a couple of fancy ones as well, like a fantail goldfish and a small koi carp that never grew too big because they were in a tank. They don't grow, obviously. If they're in a small tank, they stay small. Yeah. And they used to greet me many moons ago in the morning. And it's almost like they were flapping their tails because they recognised you through the tank because they were waiting for the fish flakes. That's basically it. That's why. Because most people become goldfish waiting for the fish flakes to be fed to them in the morning. And they got basic recognition because they kind of have some primitive understanding in their brain that when they see certain light signatures that hit their eye, they can recognise feeding time. It's like a low-key version of Pavlov's dog. So that's the level that you're talking of, really, that people have descended to the level of goldfish because they've been trained to wait for the fish flakes in the morning, pal.
They've been, well, like we've said on the show a few times, two massive wars, two massive worldwide wars, with all those people killed. You know, I was doing some research about Holodomor. People don't get taught about Holodomor. People don't know what the Jewish Bolsheviks did in Russia in the First World War, and then going into the Second. Nobody bothers to realise there was 60 million people starved to death, where people ate grass and even turned to cannibalism. You know, we've got all these things that have happened, but we've got, I said last week, it's like a TV package version of everything. So if we've got that goldfish mindset and we've got this grooming going on, then you've got that reprobate mind, because it's all about pleasure, isn't it? Entertain yourself, distract. Look, it looks like they're pushing the fact that, look, you won't need to work because AI is going to do it all. So we'll put you on this basic income and just stuff you loads of food and entertainment. It's like idiocracy. You know, that was what, 30 years ago? 30 years ago, that film. And, we're watching the nations of the world dumbed down, and we see this repeating pattern. It's about getting rid of as many people as possible, mixing all the races together so there's no, you know, it's like there's no adhesion. People don't have anywhere. And it came to me, I don't know if you've ever seen a film called Equilibrium with Christian Bale in it, but there's no stimulus allowed for the people. When the siren sounds, everybody stops, they open the pill packets and they pop a pill, and it keeps them numb to everything. And the underground, Alex, the underground part of it is where, and Bale plays this, what they call a grammaton cleric, which is like martial arts with guns. And he goes and arrests the people who are hiding in corners, listening to music and things like that. And you think, well, nobody'd let that happen, would they? I can see the formula there.
Yeah, it is miraculous, really. I think you can look at the stupidity of people, the goldfish effect, and you just described it differently. But also, we do talk about not just the societal planners in a classic sense. We talk about and think about the media. And, we've seen recently that, obviously, when Trump has a legitimate grievance about what was done to him around, a stitch-up, that really started, they were stitching him up from 2016, never mind them talking about the Capitol riots at the start of 2021. It's all the rage, for people to try and minimise when the BBC got caught with the pants down, even our own politicians. So these are our own politicians, and when people are partisan, so when they follow, obviously when Labour start to fail, because they've pushed everything left, they can't go to the right at all because they've maligned the right so much. So you have to go even more crazy left. So you get your Zach Polanski's, your Ed Davies, they're even more crazy than Labour, because they're all forced out to the extremes. So it's a really messy situation for journalism to operate in. And all these apologists, the BBC have, they've gone radically woke left. They did stitch Trump up. It clearly wasn't a mistake. It was part of the campaign going on for years before that people still believe is legitimate. So the problem is the media is then bolstered by this polarized position that they've managed to put between the left and right. And the left control virtually all the apparatus other than government in America. That's where the right is installed, but it's still a struggle, and it was for Trump the first time. We might get Farage installed. They'll try every trick in the book to stop it. So the people who are the elites and the people who disseminate them are the media. Because if the fish didn't believe in the flakes and they weren't being fed them by the media, they might end up becoming different kinds of fish and eventually evolving. But at the current rate of knots, what we're dealing with is a system in all its parts continuing to keep the people dumb. So it is us, and it is the system, and it is our fault technically when we're done. But in a way, how can you blame a little goldfish for being duped?
Well, that's the whole point to this grooming. It's, we've gone through the debaucherous phase, as we've talked about, with music, with drugs, with free love, with pornography from the 50s, 60s, 70s. We got into the 80s, we get into the 90s, and it's like things didn't stand still, but they didn't just carry on with it. But then we got into the 90s, and you had things like Basic Instinct. The amount of people who used to talk about one bit of the film where she crossed her legs, that all this was starting to push boundaries. Then we had we had the real takeover of the kids in the 90s with Spice Girls, getting our kids, 6, 7-year-olds to sing, I really, really, really want to zig a zigar. These kids don't know what they're doing, but they follow them up like as they grow into adulthood, like Hannah Montana, this Miley Cyrus, this cute little adventurous kid turns into this swinging it on a stage with a wax out on a wrecking ball. And kids have followed that all the way through, and they now think that's acceptable. So there's a nation being created in every part of the world, and they're all being fed the same bollocks that's coming through the education system. Kat Watkins, who's been on here before, that the stuff that's in the curriculum over there, and it's normal. They're normalising everything. The one thing I know about the word normalising, if we have to normalise something, it's normally not been normal to do that, but we have to make it normal. Now that's very strange. But another thing I noticed when we were talking about the stimulus, in the 70s, Alex, do you remember how many coloured cars there were? There was all kinds of colours everywhere.
Yeah.
What do you see now? White, silver, black, maybe a little bit of a colouring tinge here and there, but not the colours that you saw in the 70s, bright yellow, bright green, and it's like all that's been taken out. All the creativity in music, in people who could sing, is now being changed with AI, it's being changed with voice converters. Nothing's real, Alex. And it's been groomed through, the best groomers possible, our parents. So what's even better on top of that is they groom us to pay for that, for ourselves. And people can't see it. That reprobate mind that is cut off. And I think it is going to be a trauma or something shocking that, is going to wake people up. COVID was a bit of a shock to a lot of people. People who I never thought would actually be thinking about things are actually doing that now. The amount of people that we're getting messages from, I can't always answer all the messages. I know some people are waiting for answers, but it's to try and go through all this stuff, join dots, try and assimilate it myself, because it's things that you can't do anything about, Alex. With anxiety and mental health issues, you'd think that you'd be worrying about things like what we're talking about, but it's not here. I'm sat looking at the cat. It's not happening here, so it doesn't feel real. But the little thing, the pertinent things that are happening right in your life, like getting an email that you don't want, that can cut you off at your knees, falling out with people, all that kind of stuff, that's the real thing. But when we're basing it on a reality that we now know is the narrative is false. Taylor says it every week about the movie. I'm just trying to see what the characters are and what they're playing. Marjorie Taylor Greene has now left Congress. She's had a bit of a spat with Trump, and there's something going on there. It's like EastEnders, isn't it? And Coronation Street and Brookside, all thrown into one with Dynasty and Dallas, and we just don't know. We just don't know.
Dynasty in Dallas, you're going back. I know Dallas made a comeback a few years back, but you sure you aged there, pal?
But mate, I couldn't help it. I had to, if I was in, I had to watch it with my mum because she loved it. But I mean, even when Bobby Ewing died, and then I
Yeah.
don't know how long it was later. Oh no, it was just a dream. He's in the shower, and my mum even went, "Bloody hell, that can't be right." But she still watched it. She still watched it. I think Brookside has made a comeback or going to make a comeback. It's it's like taking all the old folk backwards for memories, and it's just keeping people entertained again, and it's distraction. We've seen the BBC's in all kinds of trouble, but they're still taking TV licenses. People are still wanting to watch that stuff. Where'd you go with it? Like I said, a lot of the stuff we talk about is provable. When I said you shouldn't be paying your bills, you should be setting them off as a creditor in a debt-based economy. Nobody knows that, but it's true. But they'd rather have that convenient lie because of what it could mean. And then you get the other answer is, well, what can you do? Well, we'll just see what these people do then, because I don't know I know you don't really keep your finger on the pulse, Alex, but you do interact with people, and people know there's something wrong, don't they? They feel there's something coming.
Yeah, people certainly know something's not right. I think it's like we often talk about Martin Niemöller. The thing about awareness is none of us really knows the exact moment when we became aware or awake, or however you want to call it. But we know there's a process involved. Some people it's really sudden, others is gradual awareness. But it's something that, wouldn't it be great if you had a sledgehammer, but sometimes it's drip, drip. So with Niemöller, it's like, well, when they finally come for you, and that applies economically, when paying nearly £200 for a BBC television licence, which people just all thought you had to do, just because you did, then over time, little forces have broken that down. Alternative modes of TV, other things start to chip away at the edges, and people realise. And then there's protest. It gets on the political agenda with, I don't know if UKIP first brought it up, but then obviously with reform, and then there's this debate about the BBC and the licence fee. All these little cracks start to appear, and then when you're under this form of austerity again, where people go, oh, it's another £200. But when they got these other doubts as well, and they go, hold on, I know some people now who don't pay it, and they say you don't pay it for this reason. And I'd rather keep the £200 and don't watch BBC anyway because it's crap, and now there's all this scandal about they've lied. You have to be an ultra woke lefty liberal who just hates, got Trump derangement syndrome, Farage derangement syndrome, whatever is your particular drug of choice. Then you've got to be so incredibly delusional that you think, oh yes, I think we should continue to pay £200 something that's completely crap, full of lies. Maybe the nature documentary still has some merit whenever they put one of them on, but I'm sure they'll start distorting them eventually and saying that pelicans are getting smaller because of climate change as well. They'll find a way of sneaking that into the narrative. So people, the believability of the BBC is now coming under threat, and this is like fairly typical of what happens when systems collapse. We always see a grand ending, but the tectonic plates, the little cracks, the stress fractures, a bit like Kaplunk, the game you used to play with the straws and the marbles. Always one last one where it drops, but everything that led to that was making it more and more unstable. That's the kind of position that we're in now. So those people who can only come up, made away by brute force as we see it, there are factors that are chipping away in the background, slowly but surely, just not fast enough for what we'd like.
I think it's. I get what you're saying about not as fast as what we like, but I think it is moving fast. It's just that people have over COVID. People are fighting now against things that they weren't doing 10 years ago. But there's been quite a few who are using strategies from 10 years ago that we knew were good arguments, but they weren't remedies. They're playing games. It's like, I won't do it justice, so I won't go into what the ins and outs of what he did, but he'd been able to get a payment for being harassed over a charging order, this lad. And he got a payment for it because they couldn't prove it. So he used that to pay his council tax, just to play that game. So either that's going to keep happening, or they're going to find a different way around it. But people are trying. People are doing different things. You know, we've said many times when we went into that courtroom about council tax, we wanted to end it. We wanted to remedy it. We wanted to show that it's only a commercial property that's applicable to that. But now we know why they're applying it to those houses that don't have business or any commerce going through them, and it's because of that registration process. So we've got a fundamental problem right at the centre of the entire institution and establishments of our country. And that's not just this country, because it applies everywhere. Scotland have got it, Wales have got it, the Irish have all got it. And we're all in this same boat, and we're all looking at the same thing, that banks are committing fraud, taking real property and not lending money because they can only facilitate a credit agreement. They're not lending anything. We've got taxes that are being applied inappropriately, because council tax, you know, people say it's an illegal tax. It's not. It's a legal tax for commercial property, but it's being applied inappropriately. Then when it came to the utility bills, Alex, the process of you paying taxes, what are you paying for? Oh, well, you pay your government to run your country, and what do? Well, they make sure you've got your kettle on when you get up in the morning. What happens if it's not working? Straight on the phone. Excuse me, why have I not got my brew this morning? You know, you've got all this stuff, and people just can't.
Oh,
go on.
Right. Is the answer not that we just get Robin Hood's paperwork to shut down the courts from committing fraud against the living men and women of England?
Say that again, mate. You were a bit choppy. Robin Hood's what?
Do you not think that the answer is that we get Robin Hood's paperwork to shut down the courts from committing fraud against the living men and women of England, mate?
Oh, okay. Well, I think we've tried everything else. We've tried remedies, gone into the courts and used we've said you can't even do this in your own rules and regulations. But I'm open to try anything. I mean, there's a lot of things that have got merit, but it's
I was quoting Louise in the chat, mate.
I know, but
I was quoting Louise.
I know, but we've got a jurisdictional issue. They sit in that jurisdiction. So now we've got to say, well, how do we flip jurisdiction? We go in, we demand this, we go in as a claimant, because as a defendant, they're not hearing you. So we've got to do all this, but nobody's done it. So Robin Hood's paperwork might work, but nobody's done it, because otherwise this situation would be changing. But I can feel something's building. There's people going in there with really good arguments that are putting things, they're putting sticks in the spokes. But nobody's turned up with that it's done type thing, apart from one. There's only one person turned up and said it is done, and I'll agree with that. But as it comes to the courts, the corrupt, they're sitting in that jurisdiction. That's what we've got to batter. How do we get that jurisdiction recognised and not a judge selected to just commit fraud?
Yeah, they're not going to allow precedents, are they? That would be fatal for them.
I don't understand all that. Online, the me of England get the paperwork. Bloody hell. It takes a lot to type like that. Oh.
Yeah, I know that. I was thinking, is that a default font setting, or is it dog Latin? Or I don't know. I don't get it.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But let's just crack on with these videos. I see Taylor's just joined in the green room. Won't be a sec, but right. So we've gone through this now, Al. We've gone through where we've had all this promotion of these jabs. We've got the FDA promoting everything. They're taking instructions from the WHO. Then they are. Then they're not. Then they are. But we're doing that. We've done all the exact same stuff, but now we've got a little bit of a change in narrative, as if somebody's, as if something's in the pipeline.
Clearly, these two studies show that not only does the flu vaccination increase your risk of flu by 27%, and that study was by Shrestha and colleagues out of the Cleveland Clinic. Over 40,000 people were in that study. So this is a robust study, very credible. And then the other study found 340% increased risks of other viruses when you get the flu shot. And so not only are you getting more flu, you're getting more coronaviruses and more infections, and it's just ridiculous.
So they're admitting, Alex, that they knew that this could be possible. Certainly one of the doctors did. So everybody's known that this could be possible, yet it's all been done now. We've got damaged immune systems, but now new viruses that could just be the same virus, but their immune system's so weakened, and they've got SV40 in there that encourage, put an SV40 in there. What does that do? It causes cancer. That's in these jabs that they it's hard to string enough sentences together to show how evil this is to what people have. They're going to say they weren't forced to do it. We didn't force you to do that. Well, if somebody can't go here, then they have to come to something to do that. And they put a lot of trust in these people, Al. My family, I've lost people. I'm sick of seeing the local crematorium the last couple of years. So when do we be able to start this conversation? Because we've seen it now over 5 years. Everybody knows something wrong. But we've seen it now build up for why we need it. We saw the panic. We saw the rush. We saw car parks everywhere being turned into these drive-through genocidal jabbing things. And you sat there at the traffic light shaking your head and knowing what you know, but you've been called a nutter again. Now we get to this point where all these statistics are saying cancer's up 300 odd %. What is going on?
Yeah, well, exactly what it says on the tin. If you're allowed to look at the stats, I did hear something earlier in the week, but I wasn't paying loads of attention because there's that much news talking about how the Office of National Statistics were now refusing to release certain statistics because they would be so incriminating. I mean, it's getting to incredible levels when that's happening.
When you have to tell the Office of National Statistics, please don't publish them because they'll lock us up or they might do worse. But
yeah,
this has really happened. Alex, this has really happened. People are pointing at Boris Johnson and people like that. These people are just actors in our version of Taylor's movie. These people are the actors, mate. We know where this goes. We know these elitists, these bloodlines that have fought and allied with each other against Christ all through. It's all there. These people believe it. The ones who are getting people to stand in Parliament and shake pieces of paper and go, rah, 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 and we believe them while they're believing what they believe. One of my best friends said to me, governments wouldn't kill their own people. And she genuinely believed it, Alex. Yet, a cursory look through history, it's always happened. It's, wherever you want to go, and it's based on knowledge. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and this is the one-eyed man. So we keep everybody dumb, we distract everybody, and we run away with everything, and then we can have the world that we want. But it won't happen here, will it, mate?
No.
So
this put some flags up a pole, and you'll feel better.
Oh man, it's unbelievable, Jeff. So this is the last video. What I've got to play with it.
You spotted something huge. It happened in the last 24 hours. The CDC has changed its information on its website regarding autism and vaccines. Tell us what you found and what it may signal.
Without any press briefing at all, the CDC has made a dramatic change on their website regarding their statements. And the CDC now says that prior studies that have denied the link between childhood vaccination and autism are not evidence-based. They're not valid. And the timing of this is, honestly, is very, very consistent with the CDC reading the McCullough Foundation report. We published the most comprehensive report on autism on October 27th, 2025. It's already received over 200,000 downloads and reads from the European Commission preprint server. We sent the report to the CDC, HHS, and all the officials. And now, 3 weeks later, the CDC has essentially read our report and knows that there are compelling sources of information compiled, that the prior studies were misleading. There are 29 studies that claim that there was no link between vaccines and autism. Not a single one of those studies examined the vaccine record, talked to the parents, or examined the children. And they didn't have clear control groups. Now we have well over 100 studies pointing to the link. And so the CDC and HHS say now they're going to start their own investigation, and we applaud them for doing so.
That is huge.
Dr. McCullough, how does a study exist, or how does it exist as a study on the effects of vaccines with respect to the propensity of autism if they're not looking at the vaccine record? They're not. How does that even exist? That's not a study.
They're using automated sources of data, and I think, honestly, they're almost intentionally doing what's called a type 2 error, that is failing to find the effect when it's there. But it's those studies, Amanda, that Senator Bill Cassidy and Maggie Hassan and Bernie Sanders, they held up at the Senate hearings back when RFK and others went through. They were holding these up as definitive proof that vaccines aren't linked to autism. And it's obvious they didn't read any one of these studies. Now there are 12 well-done research studies in the modern day showing a healthy child born today is healthier if they remain completely unvaccinated.
You spotted something huge. It happened in the last 24 hours. The CDC.
What do you reckon? What does that say?
Yeah, well, have you noticed there in the comments, Ashley Styles just finished a Telegram chat, people saying nurses are quitting because they can't cope with the amount of jab victims. One person said they've had 780 courses of antibiotics since being jabbed. So, they never really cared. They probably knew it would come out eventually. But people are like these goldfish. And we go, 5 years ago now, 6 years ago nearly since that started. 4 years or more since we've been out at worst of it. Oh, yeah, people are dying because of that. Oh, well, what's on TV tonight? So, even now, all this is coming out, people forget. Even when someone dies for about 6 weeks, it's raw, and you get on with your life. There's something natural in human experience which just inoculates us from this kind of momentum, because we're fighting battles on so many fronts, so many things to remember. Life goes on. Somebody dies, you grieve, you carry on living. Afterwards, you go, hey, they were killed. You go, oh, that's terrible. We can't countenance it when we're in the middle of our deep grief and the shock and scandal of it all. But people are strangely resilient in being able to let time pass and just forget. Maybe it's like a memory type immune system, otherwise we'd all go insane, and it's preferable being completely blind to going insane. So people end up choosing a bit of blindness to cushion the blow. That's the only kind of way you can explain it, really, I think.
People are more manipulable if they're kept in a fight or flight situation as well. And everybody's, can I afford this? Can I live like that? I've never seen as many people with real anxiety and mental health issues, incidents almost daily of, persons being on carriageways and motorways and railways. and all the violence that's going on, mate. It's like it's a you know, I run out of words because it's a world I didn't grow up in, and I keep trying to think, when did all this happen? Was it in the last 5 years? Was it in the last 10? Was it in the last 15? Yeah, but if I go back longer than 15 years, I was still just doing what everybody else does. You know, 2008, 2009, bloody hell, after 11 and a half years of, you know, hard time, after 11 and a half years, it was like, wow, 2 years of freedom, mate. You know, good job, loads of fun. You know, it was time. And then all the legal stuff kicked off.
Yeah.
It was just, it was when I realised that when you've got policies like the Kalergi plan that was initiated in 1929, remember, we had legal immigrants that, you know, because we lost a lot of people, so people did move to this country. But this is totally different to what is happening. It's all of Europe's been changed. You know, I saw Glenn Beck pose a question about why is Germany now suddenly deporting immigrants, paying people to leave. Well, they're having a caliphate called there. That's how much Europe's changed. You know, this is an unprecedented time.
Well,
if people don't get a grip and put a stop or change the direction, then this is what will happen. And it's difficult when EastEnders is on and I'm a celebrity, Alex.
Yeah. Well, the thing as well is, I'm not saying everyone on the planet should watch this show, because who are we? We're just a few people trying to raise a few points. But, and again, a couple of further comments from Ashley Styles in the chat. Again, one person said Middlesbrough Hospital daily ambulance call-outs at the emergency have gone from 3 a day to 40. And then the follow-up one you've just put on the screen. Now, we weren't on that Telegram chat that Ashley had. Ashley becomes a source, right? So we wouldn't know about it unless Ashley put that in the chat. Now we've put that out on the airwaves. You put it up on the screen. And people wouldn't know that. And this is what it does. It illustrates the power, because only ambulance staff would see that. Anybody else, they might think, oh, there's a lot of sirens, but there've always been a lot of sirens, and people discount that data. But the people who are seeing the actual raw statistics, between small cohorts, people are seeing these shifts, and they, you know, they point 2 and 2 together, and they become like little investigators. Like, why is that? And there's enough of them are curious enough to ask the question. So knowledge will grow, but it will be a slow incremental process. And so it's feels like a race against time. And yet, like you say, Paul, we're getting more of the obvious visible evidence. And that's not just about, you know, in America, you know, the states of Trump and now the Q project's going on. It's about how people are seeing the cracks appearing. People at large are seeing the cracks appearing. And no matter how much denial you're in, you know, there's two sides of the equation. What the governments, and let's call them the allies of truth, are doing. But there's also how the people are responding. And it's not just the big moves that we see in the media. It's when people make little comments, you know, in a chat that get broadcast on the air, and then somebody else sees it, and then somebody else runs with it and talks to somebody else. This process they were trying to shut down under COVID. You can't meet in pubs, you can't talk this, you can't do that. KGB used to do that. You know, they try and shut down any secret meetings in case people were colluding. So it's well-known tactic, but it's like with guerrilla warfare, it's very difficult to shut that down. Once the people start getting mobilized and talking, and that's the thing, you gob, you know, it's important.
Mate, I can't get them bang pots and pans for this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they could bang some pots and pans for the NHS.
Yeah. Well, we're not Hindus, are we? But it's fashionable for New Age crew to talk about the throat chakra and when it gets blocked, as they say. Well, it's just fancy poetic language for saying people have lost their voice. Trauma can rob people of their voice. You don't need a spiritual interpretation, no matter how it's mythologically encoded through chakras or whatever. You know, at the end of the day, people psychologically who've been traumatized lose the ability to connect, let's say, the head and the heart. And that again, what that overlay, that chakra system overlay talks about is basically miscommunication. The head and heart can't connect. and you get trapped up here, going round and round, and that's what we're dealing with. Our voice has been cut off, and that's like it's how you get from head to heart, backwards and forwards. They need to communicate, and then your throat, your voice needs to express the truth that exists up here and in here. And if they're not connected, you're going to be missing something. And I think that's for us from a Christian perspective. You know, God said, "I'll give them a heart of flesh to replace the heart of stone." And all the people who are always talking in a very limited way about the kingdom of God is within you. That part of it is true. It has to come into your heart center, the core of who you are, and transform you there. And this is why it's not happening faster. And people's heads and hearts are having to catch up, and the voices are having to be released. And the critical point will come if they don't manage to get their tech prison planet in place first. And as with all things, even with the French Revolution, it was off with his head. You know, the guillotines came out. You know, they've just got better tech to put down the revolts. But in the long run, the sheer weight of numbers is with the people. So it's going to get a bit of a bloodbath, I think, at some point. We've not been so bad with that over here in the UK. We were inoculated from that because of Methodism in John Wesley. There was kind of a revival of spirituality. You could say that was a bad thing because, you know, the English developed a stiff upper lip in coping with stuff. You know, you look at the French, they're out, yellow jackets are out, even though they were getting, you know, battered all the time and put down. No matter what we think of the French, they've got that spirit of the people when they push it too far. So it's very difficult for them to stop the drip effect eventually becoming a torrent. But obviously we've got the other angle. That's a kind of a geopolitical and cultural analysis, but we've got the spiritual angle as well. You know, a point comes when finally there's a deeper level of evil coming through, and it's going to work out on a cosmic level to kind of end history as we've known. It's not just going to be one more cycle of degeneracy coming to an end and then a rebirth of culture and society like you've seen over and over again. It'll be a final one. So yeah, get your popcorn out and decide following Judge Dredd.
They're going for the takeover, mate. Demolition Man, Running Man, Hunger Games.
Yeah,
that's the porn, mate. You know, people. If people could understand what these, the energies and what these families are like, you know, when you look at the history of the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, the lack of love in that family. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing there. You looked at them, how benevolent they were, how they're throwing the money and creating charities and all the charity work. But when with their own children, you know, there was none of that bonding there. And they've always been like that. These bloodlines that they all claim into now, because, you know, we know those bloodlines have diluted over the time because, you know, there's only so many times that you can keep marrying your sister or your first cousins before we start having things go wrong genetically. So you get things like Princess Diana, which was a diluted but pure, you know, still a bloodline. You've got all these things that interweave. You have a 13-year-old girl who does all this genealogy and links all this royalty and all these actors and entertainers and presidents and military leaders and all this. You see the genealogy that's all linked. And you think, is this a coincidence, mate? You know, you mentioned the French. Inside all these nations, you had like the Vichy French who was undermining their own country because there's all these things that have always been going on. You mentioned it about there's been many antichrists. So and it's that antichrist spirit. And you can see this, the last century, what went on. There was major changes. You know, I come into this world 72, mate. Is this life, Mum? Yeah, that's life. Work hard, pay your bills. Well, I'd rather play on my bike. No, you've got to work hard, pay your bills. Why? Well, you want a house, you won't get married, you'll have kids. Why? Because that's life. Oh, okay. That's not quite true. There's a lot of things that my mum told me was life, and I know isn't true. And I know that if she was still here, bless her, that she would argue with me about it. But the truth is the truth. You can't keep going on having convenient lies and then get upset when you realise somebody's doing something to you that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Taylor, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you're a little bit quiet, mate. I wasn't sure if you'd had your Wi-Fi taken off your.
Oh boy.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
Keep going, man. What can you do? The world's. We were just talking. I don't know how much you heard, but how everything has been speeding up, and the last 15 years, when I look back, just how much things have changed. Then a bit more turbo boost on 5 years. So, what have you got for us tonight? Have you got anything to add to anything that you've heard, by the way? Because we did mention Trump.
Well, I only came in recently, so I didn't hear everything. So,
Okay, talk about yourself, mate.
okay, I'm fat. And I don't have a girlfriend. And
Oh, look, bless you, Taylor. Right, we're going to say, Lord, please help Taylor to deal with his fat obsession and to find a girlfriend in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank
problem.
you. Okay. Anyway, so this last week's been pretty funny. I find people just be riding along the same bandwagon train of just seeing every single event that happens and then freaking making an opinion on it based off of the then instead of putting it into the bigger picture. And so what's it called? I just find it to be pretty amusing when people get caught up in the moment, especially when it came to this Epstein stuff and the stuff with Marjorie Taylor Greene. So
yeah, we brought Marjorie up actually, didn't we? What's the crack though? I believe that Trump said, "Oh, she wanted me to call her, and I won't call her." What? And now she's spat a dummy out. What's the crack with that?
Well, first of all, let me just say this. I just think it's funny that people are getting on this bandwagon, considering the fact that how many times has this happened now, where Trump seemingly seems to break with somebody who he's seemingly close to. It's like, let's see here, off the top of my head, let's see here. There was Ron DeSantis, there was Elon Musk, there was James Comey, etc. There's just so many. People just keep falling for it every single time. Gets pretty old. I'm not gonna lie. It's like you got to be able to recognize the pattern.
Taylor, do you know that there's people who don't do any of the research you're on about, and instead of saying that this has happened loads, just explain why this particular thing's happened? Because you've been on and explained about Musk and stuff like that, but people will want to know, because I've had messages about the movie and the plan and all that kind of stuff. People who said that they've done Q to the nth and they believed it once and they didn't, all that stuff. So I know that you're in a fight like that, but you can explain this in a way that you can draw people back and show it. But where me and Alex sit is a few tiers up, saying, we know there's bigger players. So I see what you see, but there's a lot of people who are now tuning in, Taylor. And like I said, you did have a fan. There's a fan, but I've lost the email that I was going to pass on to you. If I find it, I'll pass it on, because
he's got loads of fans. He's got loads of fans.
This lady said that her son loves the historical segments. So I don't know if they subscribe to your channel. But anyway, we went off on a tangent.
Are we not getting him on screen? They can take a screenshot of him, right? And then do some fanboying over Taylor. But Luke, before you carry on, I just want to say something funny, because I nearly started cracking up before, right? Chris, in the chat, Chris O'Rourke, he said at first, it's funny, like this is a short comment, has Trump been replaced, Taylor? Because he didn't put a comma after replaced. I read it as, has Trump been replaced by Taylor? And I thought that was quite original. I think, Taylor, you do a bit. I think we need to get right.
Are you kidding? She
We
didn't.
need
Taylor,
Taylor in a Trump mask. Come on.
Taylor would have called for airstrikes on half of the country by now.
No, just a shitty little state.
Anyway, Marjorie, tell us about it.
Well, first of all, let me just respond to that comment.
What is
First
the
of all-
point of? Hang on. What is the point of this part of it now? Because we've just had this Epstein stuff. With people who wrote saying Tommy Robinson's in those files, Farage is in those files. I haven't looked, so I can't really say they are or they aren't. But there's something formulating here. So if it's looking like they're pretending that, oh no, it isn't, fell out. Why? What distraction is this, and where does that fit in? If that makes sense.
I see what you're saying. Well, first of all, let me just respond to that comment saying that yes, there are many different Trumps actually, and yes, thank you for pointing out. If you put them side by side in terms of their height, you can clearly notice the difference between them. So you can clearly see that there's multiple different versions of him. The real Trump, who knows where he is? He could be sitting in Mar-a-Lago, freaking drinking tea or something. I don't know. But yeah, there's definitely multiple different ones. There's 5'11" Trump. There's 5'9" Trump. I think there's even one that's over 6 feet. I mean, it's over. So yeah, there's Yeah, exactly.
He needs a mini me, doesn't he?
Because I mean, to be fair, at this point, he's done. He's done what he needed to do. And the only thing that I think he's probably doing at this point is probably just signing off on stamps and papers and stuff. And the military is really the one running everything at this point. So, it's not much different from the Biden years in a way, because we know that wasn't Biden. So at the end of the day, people vote, but it's just like at the end of the day, right now, obviously voting's still important because we want to see what the consensus of the country currently is. But at the same time, it's like it's like you always say, don't look at the guy sitting in the White House and think that's the guy at the top, because it isn't. But regardless, let me go ahead and get to that whole let me go ahead and get to that whole Margie stuff.
Margie.
Okay. Or as I like to say, Maggie. Like Maggie Simpson. But I will say this first of all. Let me preface this all by saying that first of all, I really like Margie's work. She's done a lot of good job over the years, calling out the BS and keeping certain stories alive that other members of Congress and the media aren't able to because of one reason or another. And I just think that it's pretty interesting that people are now starting to blackpill over that whole thing, just because but regardless, let me just go ahead and get to the story so I can go ahead and just get to this. I got two stories on this, actually. We'll start with the first one first. We'll go in order.
So hang on. Is this going to tell me why this Marjorie Trump thing's come out?
Yes.
You better. If you go off on a tangent.
Okay. So let's go ahead. This one's from a week ago on the 16th. So let's go ahead and read this one. Oh, look, Commander Trump has yet again, publicly and viciously, quote-unquote, split with yet another individual that he had once trusted and admired. How many times have we seen this play run? Robert Mueller, Michael Cohen, Kim Jong-un, Jeff Sessions, Jim Jordan, Jeremy Powell, Thomas Massey, Steve Bannon, Ron DeSantis, Elon Musk, et al. Good list right there, by the way. This time, it's the feisty quote-unquote conspiracy theorist of Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene, with a Q, of Georgia, being ripped apart, pro wrestling style, by Troll Master Trump. From the article, quote, President Trump is done with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, once one of Mr. Trump's most reliable allies on Capitol Hill. The Georgia Republican has increasingly broken ranks with him, most notably by calling for the release of the Justice Department's files about the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. By Friday evening, Mr. Trump will let the world know how he felt. I am withdrawing my support and endorsement of Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene of the great state of Georgia, he wrote on social media. Over the past several weeks, Mr. Trump said, all I see wacky Marjorie do is complain, complain, complain. End quote. Golly, what a shame. You think the Donald and the Q Queen will ever kiss and make up again? Rolling eyes. For MAGA normies and black pill addicts, the banishment, in quotes, of MTG strikes as a bolt of bad news. For the uninitiated and the thick-headed, the rupture represents an unfortunate fissure within the ranks of the right, one caused by Trump at a time when a united front is most needed. But for those of us rooted in the knowledge of strategic psychological warfare as well as recent presidents, this is a very promising development. You see, the highly public breakup was over the keystone issue of Epstein, aka Mossad Island, and the satanic horrors which took place there. Not only is Epstein Island not going away, but this latest stage stunt serves the purpose of further stoking the controversy over Trump's mysterious reluctance, quote unquote, to blow up the Epstein story. The scriptwriters are building tension and lots of it too. And then here's a couple headlines. Trump calls Marjorie Taylor Greene ranting lunatic amid Epstein files dispute. We are troubled by the Trump-MTG split over the Epstein files. It's all scripted. MTG, quote, it's astonishing really how hard Trump is fighting to stop the Epstein files from coming out, that he actually goes to this level, end quote. In addition to being a dodge crusader on the Epstein-Mossad Island issue, MTG had also broken ranks with Trump over Israel and its US-based lobby. She has publicly referred to the war in Gaza, which was, as we all know, a wag the dog fake, as a genocide, and she openly called for the Israel lobby, AIPAC, to be registered as a foreign entity. The fact that a prominent Congress gal, a Christian Dixie Republican no less, can so boldly attack Israel with such impunity and immunity constitutes all the proof one needs that the cabal is out of business. And that's really true. Before I keep reading, let me just say this right here. This is one of the big things that got JFK killed, because he was calling for AIPAC to be registered as a foreign entity as well. So look what happened to him, and then look at how Marjorie is able to just go ahead in front of the Congress and just say all this openly and not have any form of repercussions whatsoever. It tells you that everything has changed completely, and the deep state is really out of business. But moving on, Special Agent MTG's role here is to say the things that wouldn't be so prudent for her boss, Commander Trump, to openly proclaim at this time. In order to further obscure this delightfully devious dynamic, Trump has thrown up this sly smokescreen of splitting with MTG as she takes Epstein awareness to a new level. Of all the bold statements and powerful posts issued by the bomb-throwing MTG since her election to the make-believe house in 2020, there was one X/tweet from this past September that, though thoroughly unappreciated and no doubt non-nonsensical to most of her constituents and nationwide fans, topped them all for what it signaled. MTG, in response to a very informative post by Q operative James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, now CGF fame, teased a single name as follows: Rachel Chandler. Who is Rachel Chandler? That is the name of the notoriously wicked child sex trafficker to the elite, featured many times in both text and image form in a series of 2019 Q posts. We were told specifically to watch the news, in quotes, for her name to appear after the ultimate disclosure of the Epstein data. Q further described Chandler as the key, caps were Q's, to bringing everything down. Can you see Marjorie Taylor Greene's assigned role with this imaginary split now, my dear Black Pill detractors? And this is the tweet. Rachel Chandler, as a response to James O'Keefe. Rachel Chandler opens the door to the deep, dark world of satanic sex abuse and murder of children and babies. Some disturbing Q posts from 2019 below. Yep, these people were so damn arrogant back when they were still in power. They would do anything. This woman would openly post on her social media pages, on her Instagram pages of naked little boys and children, and there was this one of a kid looking like that it's gonna murder another kid on top of a freaking satanic blood sacrifice symbol with a machete or whatever it was. And then here's some camera images from Epstein Island, literally posting security pics on her Instagram. And then here's Chandler, which is probably not even her real name because Chandler equals child handler. Yep, these people are sick, just as Q said. And as he says, if the records become unsealed, much will be revealed. Watch the news for Rachel Chandler. And here's another picture of Rachel Chandler with some friends, and they're holding a little baby right there. That baby's probably dead, probably ritually sacrificed. So, yeah, captive children kept in the basement of Epstein's temple. Watch the news for Rachel Chandler. Chandler posted images of an abducted baby. What was done to that child? Oh, here's what I was talking about. Look at this. Q reposted these images, but these were posted by Rachel Chandler on her Instagram back in like 2017, 2018, 2016, something like that. Here's Bill Clinton with Rachel Chandler on Epstein's Island. Oh yeah, and then this is the image I was talking about. See, they're on top of that satanic sacrifice symbol, and the kid has a knife on top of another kid who's has their arms spread out. And then you have this little boy right here wrapped in a towel but completely naked. Yeah. Bill Clinton on a plane, presumably Epstein's, with Rachel Chandler. Oh, it's on a plane. My bad. My apologies. Satanic killing involving children, posted by Rachel Chandler, reposted by Q. Rachel Chandler is key. Captive naked boy covered only by a towel. Another Chandler image. And you can still find these images on our Instagram today. It's absolutely, it's just absolutely sick what these people were up to. I'm sure you guys already know about that, but it should still be hammered home just how.
The thing is, Taylor, that's why it goes a lot deeper, because these are just puppets. These people would be expendable, but it's the people that control these people are so much bigger than even Donald Trump. And I know you think he's going to be this savior, but all this is interlinked. And I wanted to know if Marjorie is on side with Donald and playing it, oh no, it isn't, or is she like genuinely standing to one side? Because you said you have a lot of admiration for her and what she's done. So has she done things real, like you say, Trump? I know Trump's turned things round there, mate. But I mean, after Biden, I mean, the cat might have given him a good go. You know, I think he was shoo in for this. And you keep saying about this movie. So I want to know where these players are coming into it, because it's interesting because I'm, with the Clintons and all that getting those cards. I want to see. I know you don't do predictions, but I want to see where these dots are now joining. So is Marjorie part of it, or is she not?
Well, I mean,
is it Marjorie?
Well, as I just pointed out, the whole point is first of all, the answer is yes. She's of course she's part of this operation, obviously.
Okay.
But let me just say this: that the whole point is, as this article states, her role is just be able to say and bring about truths that people like Trump are not able to because of their political positions. So at this point, it's the same thing with people like Tucker Carlson, Ron DeSantis. What's her name? The black chick who's big in the alternative media. I forget her name. You know what I'm talking about, probably. Candace Owens. Yes, Candace Owens. Thank you. People like them who, they tackle different fields for different audiences. Even Joe Rogan, to an extent. They all tackle different things. Elon Musk.
Why is Candace involved in a lawsuit with Mrs. Macron over whether she's a bloke or a girl?
Well, first of all, let me just preface that by saying, first of all, everything you see.
You never just bloody answer. You have to preface everything.
Sorry, sometimes you just need to. But
you always need to.
Well, let me just say that everything you should view every piece of news you see as a psyop, and never take it at face value, and just believe everything is a psyop until proven otherwise. Because again, we're in a military operation, so everything, no matter what it is, no matter how big or small, should be looked at as a
I have a question for you, right then, because you bring the same main information from the same sources. So, what is your proof that this is true compared to other people who would say that it's not?
Well, I don't just use one source. This is just the most convenient one I like to bring up because it's easy for me to look at. But I look at many different sources, and then I don't just listen to what people have to say. I go and look things up for myself and connect the dots and use pattern recognition, because at the end of the day, critical thinking skills are very important. And once you understand the proper context and the proper mindset you're supposed to have when looking at these things, it all starts to make perfect sense. Whereas if you just look at everything as a disconnected individual event, it all just looks chaotic and nothing seems to make sense. So at the end of the day, that's why so many, even MAGA normies in the media, they always get caught up in the smoke screen without looking through it. So, at the end of the day, if you I always say this, if you don't view things through the lens of this operation, you're not looking through it right, quite frankly, because you're looking at this as if it's all just genuine events when it's not. So I hope I gave a little bit of an answer as to the whole Margie thing, but let me go ahead and get to the second one, because we just got a little bit of news about her, quote unquote, quitting the Congress. So let me go ahead and get to the second article right here. Also, I also wanted to mention that Rachel Chandler was also close to Lady de Rothschild, aka Evelyn Rothschild's wife, who was also extremely close to the Clintons. There's plenty of pictures of them together, so just wanted to throw that out there as well. And there's also the Bronfman sisters, Les Wexner, these people. There's also Pizzagate. It's a whole big rabbit hole to dive down that I don't have time to go into today. So let's just go ahead and get to this. Here's a nice AI image, by the way. Pro wrestling. Again, it's all staged, boys and girls. New York Times: Green's exit deals a blow to GOP, putting rifts on display. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's sudden resignations underscored the fragility of the GOP majority and exposed deep discontent on the right going into the midterm elections. The decision to finally release the Epstein files in December has not healed the make-believe, quote-unquote, split between Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, as well as Republican Thomas Matthew of Kentucky, and Commander Trump. To the contrary, the feud has now escalated with an exchange of mutual attacks, quote-unquote, and MTG's unexpected and stunning announcement that she is quitting the make-believe Congress in January. Now, if Epstein bombs were actually scripted to drop in a few weeks, then what would be the purpose of even scripting such a protest stunt? There wouldn't be any purpose to it at all, as MTG could soon take credit for forcing the disclosure and blowing of the Epstein horror story wide open. Therefore, what this latest scene suggests, no crystal ball here, is something we had already expected. Specifically this. Expect still more play-acted, foot-dragging, and or lots and lots of redactions done in the name of national security. Imagine the howls of indignation that come from both controlled Liptardia and right-wing truthers, both Q-controlled and the duped, should the Trump/Bondi/Patel cover-up worsen now. That's the point. As tiresome as a soap opera has become, for we have been following it on a daily basis year in and year out, bear in mind that the bulk of the captive subjects of the overlapping kingdoms of Normidom and Liptardia are only just now coming to the universal basic dual realizations that A, big people were doing bad things on the island, and B, the government itself is clearly hiding something. That's exactly where Normidom needs to be mentally before the bombs drop. Otherwise, normies would be confused and skeptical when the enormity of what is coming, Q's term, finally does arrive. So, don't complain about the coming delays, redactions, and added tension. Instead, embrace it all. The staged cover-up is necessary. And, yep. I mean, I was already calling this from day one. Let's see, going through this, just a couple headlines. As any Qologist worth his salt knows, the Q posts of 2017 to 2020 and a few from 2022 were saturated with references to various crimes against children. Some stats. Children mentioned 83 times. Epstein mentioned 69 times. These people are sick mentioned said 41 times. Podesta mentioned 37 times. Clinton Foundation mentioned 22 times. Haiti mentioned 22 times. Maxwell mentioned 17 times. Satan 14 times. Human traffic 13. Rachel Chandler 12. Pizzagate 10, and Les Wexner 3. And many other related references.
Sounds like he should be on Dynasty or Dallas. Les Wexner.
That name is pretty awkward. I mean, who knows if it's even his real name? It probably translates to some shit. Who knows? And many other related references, as well as images and links leading to stories about shipping containers, satanic child abuse, and Hillary's direct participation in such demonic crimes. Do any of you guys actually believe that Commander Trump, a creation of Q, is really going to cover all this up? Everybody relax and savor the coming spectacles. It is for the MAGA normies, the panicans, and the anti-Trump black pill addicts to get nervous, not for we, the informed. Trust the plan and pass the popcorn. Well played, Marchie, well played. The horror show that was Epstein/Maxwell/Mossad Island will be exposed, but only after maximum tension / movie drama plays out. So that's pretty much. So I hope everyone here understands now exactly what the whole point of this whole Maggie event is. Sum
it up.
As a summarization, essentially, her whole thing is to bring even more controversy and what's the word I'm looking for? Interest, I guess, in the Epstein case, to get more and more people interested, because Epstein's not going away, as we know.
But is it what I'm getting at is she's done this to cause interest, but Trump has called her a lunatic. Is that all part of the plan still? Yeah, that's all the same act.
Yeah, it's pro wrestling.
So when you said Congress was a pretend Congress, so
yes.
You're under martial law right now.
Yes, we've been under martial law since January 6th. So that's about almost 5 years now. So yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we've been under that for a while. That's why they've been able to control the media, and also be able to put
when
these.
When you say control the media, mine goes back to World War II, where something similar happened under a martial law situation.
Well, yeah, under martial law, you were able to completely control the media, which on its face.
I mean, martial law. Are you expecting? How can I put it? Is there an end game where Trump declares martial law's gone on? All Americans are free, or does this go to basically show me your papers? Did Slidey full on, or what's the golden age? What's the end game, Taylor?
Well, the end game is the complete exposure, public exposure, the public reenactment of the justice phase of all these criminals and pedophiles and all these other people. The media, the politicians, the everything else, and also one thing we definitely been waiting for is the EBS, the Emergency Broadcast System, which goes to every single device. I'm sure you know about the EBS, so that's one thing we've been waiting for. So basically, we've been waiting for the shit hits the fan moment, where everyone finally, at least the majority of the public, finally awakens to the idea that we were really close to the precipice of the end of humanity. But in this case, it would be a public reenactment of what was supposed to happen under Hillary. Essentially, as I've mentioned before, Obama set up the Asian pivot, and as well as the Ukraine situation in Eastern Europe for Russia, and then in Iran too. There's also that. And so the whole thing, as I mentioned, COVID was supposed to happen under Hillary, but be much, much, much worse than what it was. And in summary, really, the end game is basically supposed to be just the public takedown of all the bad guys and the truth coming out about a lot of things like Epstein, 9/11, JFK, 2020, COVID, stuff like that.
You really think that's all that's happening?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm a little bit taken aback with that, Taylor. Because like I said, you're under martial law. They're doing things, but you're saying they're all play acting. They're all part of this plan. So there's something serious going on. You're saying that there's people who are still being shown to people to be alive that aren't alive. These are all massive claims, and you're going to these same sources, and you're expecting people to believe that a man has been able to do all this without anything going on when it's been under control of the same people all this time. I mean, is it different? Is it different to Bush? Have they not set this up? Because if somebody asks me, look how different it is to Maggie Thatcher, because I have had people say, oh, Maggie Thatcher wouldn't have let this happen. Maggie Thatcher did her bit to help this happen. Her greatest achievement, she claimed, was New Labour, which Tony Blair decimated, turned this country on its head. So we are being set up in a I feel a much bigger game, and I'm on the outside. I get the information that you're giving, Taylor. I do really understand it, but to say that there's all this acting going on and it's affecting people over here, because I think it was Jamie in the chat room said that, well, that cabal is still operating in this country. That's what we're fighting now. I'm seeing reports that Keir Starmer's thinking that he wants to be Prime Minister till 2034. And yet the polls don't say that, but we just don't know, because, again, for me to say, oh, well, I wish the military would take over our country so that we know that doesn't make sense to me, because when you give this stuff up, Taylor, it never comes back to you. You either comply or it goes full tilt. This is what history does. And I'm taken aback because you keep telling me how much World War II research you do. It's nth degree stuff, and yet you're seeing it happen in your own country under the guise of he's doing good things. And then there's all this distraction, and Marjorie's getting these files sorted, and you're showing all the evidence, and there's loads of circumstantial evidence pointing to the stuff going on, even before we get to any of the factual stuff. But these are going on at levels that, these are middlemen. Who's the real movers and shakers? You mentioned him a couple of times, Taylor. What's his name? Kissinger and the other fella.
Brzezinski?
Is it?
Are you referring to Brzezinski?
Yeah, Brzezinski, the grand chessboard. These people have, again, weren't the controllers. So there's a lot of stuff that's in between all this. And I think, there's mentions of martial law a lot over here, Taylor. The stuff that's, the police forces are being militarised and being told that they've got the presumption of powers. So there's a lot of grey areas. And again, there's all these distractions. That's why when you give this stuff, that's why I said, can you sum it up and tell us why this kind of stuff happens? Because, again, there's people who are wanting to listen to you, who get in touch, and don't give them just the one side. You've got to look at the amount of what, you must pour over information continuously. And I know you love it, but you've got to be able to then give some of the other side of things, because if it's all a game and it's all just it, it gives the wrong impression. Does that make sense, mate?
Not gonna lie, no, it doesn't.
Well, you're very biased. You're very biased that this is all the right thing to do when things like this have gone on in history forever. And you want martial law, that when martial law is declared, you don't get your freedom back. And you said you're willing to give up freedoms. Well, that's what the Germans did. That's what I'm saying. You've got to give that balanced bit to it, because maybe you can justify somehow that it's essential. I know you mentioned that before, but it's a dangerous thing. Careful what you wish type stuff, pal. Have you got anything else to share with us, or to sum up? You mentioned the end game, but can you see anything is going to come off this Marjorie thing, or?
Well, again, I don't like to make predictions, so I'll just leave it hopefully this Epstein stuff comes out soon, because this whole thing does get tiring. I will admit, it does get tiring and it gets repetitive.
Yeah, so, everybody knows something's gone on. Let's just get to it. And it's all the adjournments, and we know how much the courts love to adjourn and launder money and things like that, allegedly. So I agree, there is a big game being played, but where do we get to it? Alex, are you still with us, mate?
I am, yeah.
I'm just checking whether you're not froze or you fell asleep.
No, I've just been listening. And what I'd say, I thought about using this in summing up, but I'll say it now. Yeah, we always talk about the good old US of A. We've not talked about Russia. But
that's a fair point.
But what I mean by that is not what you might think. I'm only making, that's just a segue, it's just a line. Because I was thinking about Russian dolls to reinforce your point, Paul. Do you remember the old Russian dolls where you'd have a doll, and inside the doll was another doll, and inside the doll was another doll, and inside the doll was another doll? Like, that's, when you look at stories and narratives and our attempts to do something called historiography, which is genuine, it's still always trapped in some form of narrative, right? So the person narrating the history, the person interpreting it, the person relaying it, whatever, they've got some investment. But stories have a life of their own outside of the people who seem to be a part of them as well. So it's a bit interesting. And that's what, from a Christian point of view, eschatology is about in the end times. It's like, well, there might be a player outside of history and time as we know it. So if we look at one actor just on this level, on this plane of mundane existence, we know the USA is the biggest player and has been for a long, long time. Certainly since 1945, when they took over the assets of the British Empire, more or less, fully completed it. They've been a really big player, but China's coming up now, and so, economically in certain levels, they've surpassed the USA. But in terms of military spending and military size, they haven't, but they're an increasing threat. And this whole idea about, what Trump is doing, no matter what you think on the level of the story and the cinema, is he is trying to rebalance the United States in the context of, global reality. So, America has to change its position because of the rise of China. India's rising up as well. Russia's never been a mug. So there's been a redistribution of power. And, in terms of international relationship, it's like realpolitik. And there's two different ways to go, really, when in international relations. You can either have a bunch of competing nations which have all got their ideologies, and the ideologies compete for power. And you try and conquer, not just militarily, but ideologically. That's like the West versus the East. It used to be the communists versus the capitalists, sort of. So it's this sort of King Kong versus Godzilla ideological struggle. But you can have struggles on other levels. But you can also say, well, no, actually, the point is not for one ideology to win over another. one geographical region to impose itself upon another in order to have stability or global order, but to say, look, all these competing players at the global table need to adjust the position and jostle a bit and get real. That's realpolitik. Trump has largely started to do that internationally with the way he's related to other nations. He's no longer prepared to be the world protector. He's no longer prepared to bankroll the UN at the cost of America. And that's forcing real issues for the rest of the world. Oh, well, Trump's not paying for it anymore. What are we going to do? Oh, and actually, it's time for the rest of the world to grow. Trump's saying, well, we're not just going to keep bankrolling you. You know you're going to have to defend yourselves in your local disputes. If there's one between Russia and Ukraine, maybe Europe needs to take a more active role and not expect America to get too involved. And then the UK has always been somewhere in between Europe and America. Which way is it going to jump? So Starmer's in a bit of a difficult position with which way he goes on that, because he can't count on US supporting quite the same way. Certainly not Starmer being Starmer and Trump being Trump. They're like poles apart, really. So it is interesting. So the Russian doll effect, just in terms of this scene of time and relations internationally, globally, politically, it's really sensitive. If you introduce stories within stories within stories, and you have a spiritual story, or a prophetic story arc, a narrative, and not just Christianity does. The Hindus have their Kali Yuga, which is constant cycles of degeneracy and then coming back, and that over thousands of years. You had the Hopi tribes. You had all these different prophetic traditions that, roughly paralleled certain of the apocalyptic and eschatological ideas of Christianity. So it's not like it's just been, confined to the Christian West. Many, many cultures have this understanding of degeneracy, rise and fall of empires, rise and fall of spiritual authority. So there's a much bigger picture just at that level that transcends the political and the economic and a modern nation state. There's cultures and histories and traditions of spirituality. There's expectations that are prophetic about a higher hand. And this is why there's always a story within a story. So your point you're making really, Paul, is if Taylor takes one doll and gets that doll exactly right as he sees it, even if he's right, if it's sat inside another bigger doll and he's not looking at that, or he's not able to step outside of his own frame, what you're essentially saying is he might be right from his own frame of reference, but outside of that frame of reference there could be something more going wrong. So it's not that he's wrong, it's just that there might be much bigger factors in play that are going to be revealed later on. And we never know what the last Russian doll is, and Christians are saying the last Russian doll is the God and Father of Jesus Christ, and that at the appropriate hour, when evil's got to its absolute pinnacle, the enemy's finally going to be judged. All that's going to be done away with. Hope and joy is going to come for those who've believed in Christ, and it's not going to end so well for those who haven't decided to choose a maker. So that's a meta level story that transcends the geopolitical and anything that's just happening at this moment in time. So yeah, we've always got to look at it from the point of view of these layered stories.
I'll tell you what he is spot on about is the satanic level of energy that they're playing at, because this is a spiritual battle. And the fact that what Taylor's exposing about what the characters that are involved in this have all been doing this kind of stuff, so it is all being exposed. It's how do you like join all these dots? This was the whole point of trying to show that the spiritual battle is being played out down here, but so many of us were in a position where we were just tossed to and fro on our emotions. We were groomed into what this world is, and then we didn't know anything else. And it's only through things that happen, traumas mainly, that change people's lives. And I think there has been a massive amount of psyops, and the trouble is the psyop becomes, it doesn't always have to be real, but sometimes it's real and it's psychological. How many times, how old were you, Taylor, when 9/11 happened?
7 years old, I believe. Yeah, 7 years old.
Do you have memories of that day?
No, not really. No.
Well, I remember. It's one of those things where I remember where I was at that time, but they played that constantly day in, day out, day in, day out. You was having breaking news, all this kind of stuff. Then you went, because I go, well, I'll go and look into this, because my first reaction to that was something, oh, that's strange, it looks like a film. And that just made me go and look. And then when you see all the, if you create a reasonable doubt about things and you see them deliberately covered over, you don't just go, oh, forget about it then. This has happened so often, but people are usually kept so busy and distracted. One thing I wanted your opinion on here, Taylor. In your opinion, you may not know any links to it, but what would you say part of this movie for you is the king is to visit your gaff to mark the country's 250th anniversary alongside Trump? So because he's very much WEF, Charlie. What do you say this play is?
Well, wait. So you said he's coming here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the way I see it is, it's just another signal as being the key word here, that that Trump is the one in charge, and that these people, these so-called royal families and stuff, they're out of business. And they've either been, and they're also they're part of the actors. They're either taken out and replaced, or placed under submission. Point a gun to their head and say, "You do what we say, or else." Either or. I don't personally think it's him, but regardless, it's just like when a month ago, whatever, when Trump went to the UK, or was it Scotland or whatever, and the Prime Minister of Britain, and I think even the leader of the EU came to his mansion. It's just like, all these powerful leaders are all basically bowing to him, which, and the reason for that is all because of the fact that Trump's, that Trump and the Q, and really the Q operation are the ones in charge. They're the ones pulling the strings at this point. That's why we get all these cool signals. Your 17s and your freaking and your Qs and all that other stuff. But I foresee some hilarity coming out of this. Maybe Trump will chew him out, or act like that he's superior to him, just like what was it? A few weeks ago, maybe, when he was at the.
He bimbled in front of his mum. I thought that is what you were going to bring up.
When Trump walked in front of him and disrespected him, just like he did the Queen.
No, that's what I was talking about with the Queen. He bimbled about in front of the Queen.
Yeah, that was a nice signal right there. That was.
So are you saying if the royal families, because they're just figureheads, but they are part of a bloodline, right? So Trump, they're under his submission, and he represents the WEF. So the WEF is.
They're out of business. WEF's out of business. They're done. Their little Klaus Schwab and their little their whole little what was it called, the little project, that's all done. All that stuff is done, just like the climate change agenda, all done.
What would you say to Ashley in the chat who says Trump is WEF? He attended Davos and did not kick back.
Oh, he attended Davos. Oh my God! Wow, so bad. Wow. I just want to say, it annoys me when people like to cherry pick certain things.
Did you hear the rest of it before you got offended and did not kick back?
Yes, I read. I see the comment.
Okay, just checking, because you get a bit upset. You have your Wi-Fi took off you now. Stop it.
Man, I mean, and it's not like I get upset with individual people. It's more like the totality of what I see. And, it's like when I try to explain over and over the same things, and yet people just keep on recycling the same talking points, it does get old. But regardless.
Bit like your gas is free, man.
I was going to say, how Paul feels.
No, you're absolutely right about that. Remember, Jason kept on trying to didn't like having you on because of that.
No, I was at one time. I was Jason's favorite guest. when
Yeah.
him and Andy ran it, and then I became co-host and did a few shows on my own. Bless him. I was only thinking about the lad the other day, a show that we did when we interviewed. Oh, who was it?
You guys had a lot of great shows together. You and Andy.
I can't remember who it was who came up. What we interviewed. Oh, Dave Von Kleist.
Yes, I remember that one. Yeah, Dave Von Kleist.
Yeah. Oh, he was excited for that. He was excited that he had a bit of a brother crush on Dave Von Kleist.
Oh yeah, that was good. You guys had a lot of great interviews. You, Jason, and Andy.
There's some very interesting show over there on Raconteurs News.
Yeah. Sometimes I go back and watch some of the old ones because they were pretty interesting. Some.
I still share some because there's lots of interviews on all different kinds of subjects. There was no old bars with Jason. He just wanted to go into any subject. Good old days then.
Yeah, those were good.
Coming up to the last 20 minutes, we joined all these dots. I mean, Taylor, I don't know if you want to have an opinion on, because Warp Speed was Donald Trump. We played a video earlier where one of the doctors of the FDA during the jabs, they were recommending it for pregnant women, and she declined it because there was no evidence of where, and she was, I forget, was it a biological medium where that it didn't travel, and she was thinking about breastfeeding. And obviously now because we showed now we've gone full tilt that all this evidence shows that this stuff has been going on because she'd made the right decision, but it's still being pushed. Now, you've got Kennedy in charge over there, haven't you now? Or they've got
he's doing a good ass job, by the way.
So what is that? Where does that fit in the plan? If that is if that's correct information and that is still being promoted, why has that not been stopped? The military are involved, aren't they? Why is that still going?
Well, because it's like the plan says. You have to teach people. You can't tell them. You have to show them. And so at the end of the day, repeats are necessary, as Q says. And people need to be able to see to themselves exactly just what kind of things that they're, that they went through, and they have to realize to themselves that they don't want it. It's just like what happened in New York with the Zohran Mandami thing. People got to be taught a lesson. It's just like.
What do you mean?
Sometimes you just got to give people what they want. You got to give people what they want at the end of the day. And, that's the only way.
Tell them what you're saying is you've got to give pregnant women, because if they want it, this jab that will damage the child, will possibly stop her having children on a massive scale. That's what you're saying that's part of the plan. That's your
what I'm saying is that in order for is that you can, at the end of the day, you can tell people that the job is not good for you and that you shouldn't do these things and that, etc., as much as you want. It's not going to do anything until people realize it for themselves. Just like you say, it's not going to, people don't care until it comes knocking on their door. And that's exactly what it is. It's unfortunate.
It's not knocked on the door, it's injected into them. And
you know what I mean.
Yeah, but the FDA is promoting that. Their own doctor didn't want it and didn't take it because of the exact same thing that's going on. That's causing miscarriages on a massive scale. And you're saying that if they want it, that's a part of a eugenics plan, that, Taylor. This is what I'm saying. You've got to be careful with what you're saying is part of this plan, my friend. Does it not make sense to you, that?
No, I see exactly what you're saying. Also,
you've got to be careful. This isn't playtime. I get the concepts that people, because believe me, I've seen some of the states that your country's in. And we're all racing to try and catch you up, but the remedy isn't to do this. And you're saying they're in control and it's all part of the plan. It doesn't. It starts to not make sense. And I think that you should now not prove it to us, but test and prove this from different sources to see what is going on from what Alex was saying from those dolls. Because we see there's a massive game going on, and I do see there's a play of power, and I do see Trump has stood up and said, we're not part of that, and we're not paying for this, just not like that last lot did. But we've got the same in our country because we're mirrored, and they're both playing part of the same plan. And it's an oh, no, it isn't. Oh, yes, it is. So, but that plan of this, I mean, if RFK had gone in there like he did with the autism stuff, and we posted, I don't know if he was on Taylor when we played the autistic video, that they've found causes and it's been changed on the CDC. You know, it's been announced. But why has RFK not stopped that? You see what I mean? Those are the questions. Those are the questions that I'd be left with, mate. What's going on? And it's happened exactly the same here, Taylor.
It's worth saying something here. It's worth saying something because I think the argument, it's important we phrase it properly, otherwise we'll just go off on tangents, right? The real issue underneath all of this, that both sides of the equation have to answer, is like, how is social and cultural change really mediated? And how is it related to underlying psychological change? Because we know in this country with COVID and the masks, they were running psychological operations that were military type strategies, working with the media to see how Pavlov's dog we were or how Skinner's rats we were. So we know that there are proactive psychological operations being run strategically from government level, disseminated through media and through intelligence services to keep the finger on the pulse, to monitor the temperature of the nation. And it's, let's just call it, it's mass psychology, because obviously when you get mass mentalities, it's like you can control a housing market, you know, by making certain changes and, you know, increasing that for everyone. So once you apply certain pressure, you'll see, oh, everyone, oh, we did this, we thought this, we speculated this, and then suddenly we just said, oh, you're going to have mask mandates now. It's totally absurd. It's got no scientific basis, but we know we can roll this out, and everyone will believe it. So this is like Pavlov's dog on a large level of behaviorism and conditioning, and they've got certain techniques that they've been mastering for a long time about that. So cultural change and social change, a lot of it doesn't take place because somebody's running an operation, because even your best models can't cover infinite amount of variables. So there's always unforeseen circumstances, things that you couldn't have predicted beyond your event horizon. Your model only takes you so far. And this is the risk all the time when you do psyops, because if you're modeling on a certain idea of what a person is and you've got that wrong, you know, that's where AI can crop up, you know, can trip up, because it's actually thinking, right, okay, well, based on all the inputs of all the cabbages, this is what your average person will do. But they're sampling all the cabbages. So they're not going to, AI is not going to find a solution that the very small number of intelligent people find. So it's not going to factor that into the data. So even AI, a large language model, using vast amount of data, if it's using data from the responses of humans who are cabbages and it thinks it's predicting human behavior, well, it is, because most people are cabbages. That's where you got the data from. But it doesn't necessarily find the smartest strategy, because 25 billion cabbages are not as smart as about 5 top quality critical thinkers. So you've got to be very careful in understanding the relationship between social and cultural change and individual psychological change. They're connected, but they're not the same thing. So Taylor's argument would have to be, to not sound absurd like you're calling him out, Paul, it'd have to be that somebody like RFK is going, yeah, it's a bit like with child abuse thing. If we let people know the extent too quick of what's really happened, it'd shock the system that badly that we'd have carnage, right? Where all the people who disappeared kids, it'd be like off with his head, there'd be blood flowing in the streets. So when Taylor then makes the argument, well, sometimes people have got to learn for themselves, that's part of the argument, because that's partially true. but taken to its logical extent, it becomes cruel and callous, because if RFK and others would know, and you go, well, we've got to sacrifice all these short-term deaths so that people find out for themselves and wake up. Yeah, it's a better long-term strategy when people realise for themselves, but you're playing Russian roulette with lives, and if you just kind of go, well, it's a price we've got to pay, because realistically, if we don't do it that way, people won't really wake up. They'll still keep following orders. So there's truth on both sides, but it can start to sound perverse when we just say it's one side or the other. It's like it's a really complex picture. And that's why all these theories that get called conspiracy theories, it's not that the conspiratorial means the false. It's because they make oversimplistic assumptions about how easily you can just control things, because in complex systems, it's very difficult to control every little detail. This is why you get some of these unexpected brain farts that trip people up. This is why in revolutions like the French Revolution or Ceausescu, he thought he was going to be all right, and in the end, he wasn't, and he was shot. So if you make a miscalculation, the stakes are really high. Even if you've got control of the military and you've got control of AI, you think, well, that's it, we've won now. Not necessarily.
No, there's different demons, aren't there?
Yeah.
Have you posted any work this week, Taylor?
Have I? Yeah, on my Rumble page, I've posted on a bit on Telegram. I've even posted a little bit on Twitter.
What have you done? What work have you done?
I just finished. I think it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. I just finished. The what's it called? Bancarrota by which is a allegory book, essentially going over the financial system and the Keynesian financial system, explaining the fraud, explaining fractional reserve banking, and the in a nice allegory style, like giving an example in a story in order to show, like, basically, like, you know, it tells a fictional story, but it's based off of real life, and it's told in a way in order to show exactly like what the financial system is and exactly just how much of a scam it is and what it should be like, and also giving rebuttals to a lot of leftism, leftist liberal ideologies when it comes to finance, aka the Keynesian economic system. Like, for example, everyone should have free health care. Capitalism causes us to be poor. The rich are evil. Blah 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 blah. So it's a really good book. It's only 130 something pages, so I only needed to do 2 parts to it. It was pretty damn good. I recommend reading it or listening to my audio book of it. I might post it on YouTube. I'm just kind of stigmatized by YouTube at this point because YouTube likes to keep deleting me. So,
Well, I'll be honest with you, mate. I think you should look to Jesus. If you want a girlfriend and you're doing Keynesian economics, 130 pages over 2 parts, only Jesus will make that match for you, my friend.
You're probably right about that.
Or you should see now. Bills of exchange will fit in. You should now understand why I say that your utilities are already paid for. But
yeah, I understand what you're saying. Absolutely. I've known that for a while. It's just a matter of putting it into nice, easy to understand terms for even simple people, like to understand, which is really good, honestly.
Well, I had to have it put in very simple terms so I could understand it, mate. But I just didn't know that people who also understood it didn't want me to do that because that would cost them money. And that would mean that we didn't feed the system that now is enslaving round us. You're on the same kind of economic system. And then to think that we get to the point where we need military to come in, but I'm suspicious of what that it looks like now because of how vulnerable I see my country. You know, my uncles were involved in D-Day, and they fought to not let what is happening happen. And you think, how's that happened? And all this stuff it goes back so far, Taylor. There's so much more involved. It's like you know, it's like you've been shot in your face, but you've hit your thumb with a hammer, and you're looking at your thumb. It really is. When I realised that economic system, that is the exact system that they fed the educated people, the working class. I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. So the stuff that you bring, Taylor, it brings all this stuff together because it's all part of the same control system, and you expose the very dark side of it. Well, you have done in loads of shows. But do you see how far you've come since those shows on Raconteurs? You know, you've joined a lot more dots since then. You were a bit wild back then.
Honestly, I don't really feel that different, but I mean, if you say I am, then you know, I'll believe it. I don't really, I don't remember too much of the things I used to say, but
Well, you're too busy arguing with Dinning mainly, mate.
oh yeah, that was I remember that. Yeah, that was part of the problem. Is I would constantly, you know, Denny would constantly try to egg me on, and you know, nothing against Denny. He's a cool guy.
Well,
It's
yeah,
just,
but when he goes up to the top of the tower in his castle in the dark forest in Germany, and he's on his whiskey, he just baits you, mate, and you take it every time.
you know, sometimes it's fun to take it. Other times you just like, oh please, like you don't gotta be like that again, you know. But you know, like I said, nothing against Denny. He's cool.
Yeah, he is.
I haven't seen him lately. I wonder where he's been.
He was in the chat a couple of times back, but I don't.
We should bring him on sometime.
He's always welcome to come on. And he's got the email as well as the Connor. You know, he's always welcome back on as well. So anyway, Tim, we're coming up to time, mate. So do you want to sum anything up? Like I ask you every week to send me what you've done, so I could include it in the description. But if you want to post it in the chat now, you can post it in the group later, I'll try and edit it in this week.
Okay.
But do you want to say anything to wrap up and to all your fans out there, mate?
If I have fans, I haven't seen them, so.
Well, you're on the wrong side of the pond.
Well, I don't mean physically see in person. I mean like, you know, they're like email messages and chats or stuff like that. That's what I mean. But
do you post your emails? Do you post your email on things?
I don't, but I can always post it. You know what? I'll just put it here.
Hang on, mate. So you don't do social media, you don't post your email, and you wonder why nobody sends you anything.
Well, I mean, I do. It's just that a lot of the time.
You said you were a pattern recognizer, mate.
Say again?
You said you were a pattern recognizer. I see a pattern here. If you don't if you don't give people something to communicate to you, and then say nobody's contacted.
I mean, I posted it before, but I didn't get anything. But I can always post it again. That's the thing.
Well, you've got to start somewhere, mate. I mean, you're posting regular content, but maybe you're posting it in, you know, maybe it's like putting a poster up in your own bedroom. Sometimes you just got to post it out somewhere.
Well, I'll just put it in the chat right here, and I'll say it out loud for anyone who's listening. It's chimpyskippy@gmail.com. That's my email. Feel free to message me if you got what's the word I'm looking for? Try to get in touch with me. I like to have conversations. I like to be able to have guests on too, and I like to be able to answer people's questions. If they got questions for me, just send them to my email. And one more thing that I want to say, that what's it called? If you want to, let me go ahead and just bring up a couple stuff here.
Taylor, I'm not sitting on here for another hour while you go saying that. I've done this on Raconteurs News with you. So
no, I'm not going to be. I'm not going to freaking. I'm not going to go on and on and on. I just want to show a couple of quick links for people to be able to see, and that's so right here. If you just put it up on the on the screen. That being this book right here. If you want to So there's two books I recommend for everyone to take a look at if they want to be able to get a good grasp of what's going on. First of all, read this book right here, Crash Course NWO, 250 Years of the Globalist Conspiracy in just 1 hour. Easy to understand, easy to digest, simple without being simplistic. That's the motto here. It goes over the cabal from the founding of the United States all the way to the modern day, and it basically defines the problem, and then gives it, and then defines it out for everyone. However, if you want the solution to the issue, there's a follow-up book, which is the sequel, The Secret Plan to Save Humanity: A Summary of the Q Operation and the Rise of Commander Trump. This is also read in an hour. Very, very good book. I recommend anyone to read it. And one more thing that I will show is go to this website. I use it all the time. It's very, very good. This is realnewsandhistory.com. It's very, very good. Gives a lot of information. Gives a lot of free stuff, and of course paid for stuff, depending on what you want to do. You got good videos, a video series on the history of the New World Order, and the Q stuff. Everything you can really think of. But I'll just go ahead and leave it at that. I don't want to go on and on and on. I have my yes, Dorian. I have the audiobooks. I will post them on YouTube again. Hopefully, they won't be deleted again. I will post my channel link in the Facebook group chat, and then hopefully you can add it to the description of the video, Webby, as you usually do. Maybe even put it in the comment section and put it as a featured comment if you could. Well,
have you ever looked on Facebook at the Webster Report page? You can post on there,
You'll have to send me the link because I keep trying to look and I keep having trouble. So.
Okay, mate. I'll sort that for you. Well,
I appreciate it.
Thanks for your research, Sailor, and your work, and thanks for your time, mate. I'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks. No problem.
God bless, mate.
Yep. God bless. Yep. Take care.
Well, at this point, Russ would be coming in with his scriptures to bring all this, what we've talked about, together, because, we've defined what kind of a situation we've got going on, haven't we, really? But this spiritual battle, what can I know you said you had something in summing up, but what can you bring together, mate?
Well, I'm not gonna go down. I mean, I don't know what I'll say actually. Let's make it up as we go along. It's always the best way. I'll start with this though. So Dorian, we love Dorian, don't we? Hi Dorian. So Dorian says in the chat, you gotta love people, man. No books. I hate literacy. Literally hate literacy. I listen to any audiobook, but reading a book, stuff that. Well, you see, an audiobook is a book that somebody used literacy to read. So obviously Dorian hates literacy for himself, and I kind of get that because it's interesting. You can go back to oral tradition, so I'd like to use that as a segue. There was a guy called Walter J. Ong. He did some studies. He wrote a book called Orality and Literacy and looked at the consequences of when literacy came in. And you get printing press and so on and so forth. The Chinese, about the 900s. We got it under the Renaissance, 1400s printing press. Changes everything. I mean, now we've moved next level. We've gone to the cloud. Everything's gone digital. So this is a consequence. But, we wouldn't have had libraries, books and knowledge in the same way. We wouldn't have had PhDs. We wouldn't have had stored resources. But we would have had storytelling. People's memories would have been a bit, quite a lot better. It's like with a calculator, when a calculator takes the mental arithmetic responsibility off you, then you rely on a calculator and you lose your mental arithmetic ability. And when you no longer have to remember a lot because stuff's written down, your memory's compromised. And if you look at things like the difference between a play and a story, most people learn the parts to a play. And they might spend literally many weeks, even months rehearsing for about 3 productions, and it's very fixed. I'm not saying people don't ever ad lib. Some of the best people, like Naked Gun, Leslie Nielsen, brilliant ad libber, chucking a line in, can be very funny. But generally, these scripts, they are learned by rote, verbatim. They're not deviated from, because the whole point is a very rigid take on memory. But that makes that play always the same play that's presented, and it's for entertainment value only. With a story, the story can change. If you tell a story to a bunch of 8-year-olds or a story to a bunch of 80-year-olds around a campfire, it might be a similar skeleton structure of the story, but you'd tell it differently maybe to an 8-year-old audience, to an 8-year-old audience. So orally, those traditions meant there was more fluidity and people's memories were brilliant and people literally have tons of stories stored in their head. When you can put them in a book, you don't need to do it anymore. So it's interesting how people talk about evolution, and that doesn't just mean dinosaurs and versus, our views of the origins of creation. It means in an ongoing way from now. The way we evolve AI, people talking about like Musk's brain interface, transplanting consciousness onto a chip. What happens when you start tinkering with memory and you start getting into literacy and you record things and you have history? It means there's a lot more things you can do that have led to AI. You can codify things, you can have large language models that are fixed, tons of data that you can trawl through at high speed with silicon chips, and you can advance and progress things massively. But there's a shadow side, there's a downside to it. And that isn't, just because I've not mentioned the Bible or anything else, in this respect, in the last few minutes, it doesn't mean that isn't spirituality or connected to faith, because there's two polarities to faith. There's the God part of it, and the questions about, well, who is God ultimately? What is the true story or message about God, and where does it come from? You've got this weird and wonderful thing called the human condition, which is made up of all sorts of quirky individuals in all kinds of places in life, with all types of moral codes, with all kinds of religious convictions and personal beliefs. And it's like, you've got to get a message that's universal and potentially eternal and an ultimate truth about God to apply to a bunch of radically different people, radically different experiences, with a culture that's changing all the time, which is virtually unrecognizable in the last 10, 15 years, with the speed of, increase of change exponential. So it's not like a fixed thing. It's really complicated. So yeah, hopefully I've used Dorian there as a bit of a line in, starting off with the absurdism of saying, I hate literacy, but then I would listen to an audiobook which requires literacy in somebody else. You can't escape this thing. If we all went back into caves and told each other stories, we'd gain a lot from going backwards and regressing in that way. We'd lose a lot of modern anxiety and stress and problems of modern life, but we'd also lose a lot of the advantages and advances that we gain. So it's really tough to know, what the good and bad is at times in certain cultural developments. We think we know, and if we get pessimistic, we just get everything's crap. Because I'm feeling bad, everything's crap. And then you might fail to see something. It's like AI, loads of people think AI is just, the coming of Terminator, Rise of the Machines, it's going to be the end of the universe as we know it, it's going to take over humanity, and it's just not true. It can be used negatively, but it can be used unbelievably positively. It still depends on the human agents. And that I think is a really important point, because no matter how eschatological we are about God and the return of Christ, which we might feel powerless about, there are things we can do now. There's an integrity we can have now, like you say, Paul. When we look at council tax and stuff, well, once we get the facts right, that it's not an illegal tax, it's a mistakenly applied jurisdiction. The difference might seem arbitrary, but it's massive. Once we get to the core facts with a clear vision, then we can hope to come together to act in unison to maybe do something about it. But while everyone's all over the place with different theories about this and different theories about that, and they're being quite imprecise, we're never going to be able to coordinate. And I don't mean in a military sense, it's not a military operation in that sense, but we're not going to get on the same page. And that's about aligning our conscious intention, where we want to go, what do we believe in for humanity's project. We can have, so Azza was on earlier, yeah? So and he's in chat, he's Muslim, right? He has his Muslim affinities, and we've got our Christian affinities, but we have a lot in common as well. So for culture to move forward, we don't necessarily need a religious state. We don't need, the Christian church running society. That might be a very bad thing if you look at what the Christian church has done down the centuries. And we don't need a caliphate. We need politics and religion to be separate in terms of the structure of society. And we need to give people a space to be people of faith, cooperating, living side by side, and then let's allow our competing claims to be borne out. You know, Jesus, if he's right, he's going to come back. Right? So ultimately, we've got to know what our domain is. We've still got to cooperate with our neighbours. We've still got to love them. We've still got to live with them and not destroy each other. And some of the more ultimate questions, the Russian doll thing, is beyond us. We've only got our own event horizon. We can only see so far. So operate within that and try not to make ludicrous statements, you know, about hating literacy. No offence, Dorian. But, you know, that's it, innit? We're all in a goldfish bowl to a degree.
Well, I was wondering how we could bring some scripture in to cover that, because we seem to be in a whirlwind of a battle where we can see that it's being promoted, it's being set fire to, it's being situations are being created. When you create certain types of situations, you get reactions. And are they gaslighting everybody with all of this? And everybody's arguing, saying they're right about this. We saw it in the truther movement, didn't we, 10, 15 years ago, where all the great ideas that really had some traction all got co-opted very quickly, you know, one way or another. Didn't help that free man of the land stuff either. You know, despite it being true, standing in a commercial court saying I'm a man, it ruined it for a lot of people, because there are people who really were trying things early doors, and then you just saw it didn't matter what you had, Alex. It was just, you're a free man. Next, you know, they weren't interested. Where'd you go with it? Police. You know, there was nowhere to go. And to see a structure that is being forced, you know, an agenda that's being forced to cause this structural failure, where martial law, if there's an economic collapse, martial law may be implemented, and it's being cheered. And when this stuff happened to save people, certain things were given up, and people who protested that, who, you know, raised an eyebrow, were dealt with. And they came for those who were the problems. And because the people who weren't the problem didn't say anything, by the time it was their turn, even though they'd not caused a problem, it was just their turn. We've seen it so many times in history. What's going to be different this time, Alex? Are we going to get that earthly king, that earthly saviour, who's going to unite everybody under these Noahide laws that everybody's, you know, craving and salivating over? Where now the Catholics are saying all roads lead to God, and they're all shaking each other and hugging each other, and the Muslims love the Catholics and vice versa. What does Scripture say about this?
Well, we're back to psychology again, mate, because at root, it's about a person's sense of security. So when I say it's about psychology, I don't really mean it's ultimately about psychology. That's the point at which humans respond in those types of ways, seeking security. So, like, the ultimate security most people seek in the natural fleshly form is they seek to be secure from having to die, because they've got a deep existential dread and fear. Naturally, anything that's alive wants to continue to be alive. So that issue begins in our psychology. It's rooted in our interiority, our unique experience. There's a terror of death and a wanting to live. So we've got to start looking at that and saying, well, actually, what would I be prepared to do to secure that? And of course, there's many forms of death fear, because we know that we ultimately don't stop death. Some people are madly trying to reverse aging and death on a cellular level, biologically, but, you know, even the best estimates, Frankensteinian estimates, are that we'd be somewhere away from that yet, even if they could pull it off. So then the next level of that is, well, if I can get to be fearful about other things that can distract me from the ultimate fear of dying, I can be fearful about my life being taken sooner than it could have been by a war, by Keir Starmer implementing policies that are going to lead to this, or somebody putting a finger on the button, or my family dying, or the COVID jabs, or I've got to desperately make people aware and awake, because Because, so what's driving people? These are all insecurities. It doesn't matter whether the issue they're attached to is morally righteous and correct. What's fueling it is a psychology of insecurity. And then you've got to ask, well, where does the ultimate security come from? Where does the ultimate assurance come from? Some people say, well, religion, like Marx, it's the opiate of the masses. You're just numbing yourself out, telling yourself a bunch of lies about the afterlife so you don't have to face those precise insecurities. It's very difficult to defend against that because it's a plausible explanation for why people turn to faith. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong. So you're still left then with the question, if you take Marx's view, well, okay, religion's an opiate. So what do I do with my insecurity? I don't want to die. So the ultimate existential question doesn't disappear just because somebody says Marx could have been right about religion. Right then. Okay, let's say he was right. What are you going to do about your existential dread about dying? Oh, well, I won't look at it. I'll look the other way and I'll start obsessing about, well, if somebody bombs this place and somebody does that, or I walk around the corner, I get stabbed by a migrant, and then it's like, it's all fueling all this stuff. That's so polluting the narrative. It's all through the political narrative. It's all mobilised against Farage. He's seeding hate. And all these people saying these things are just being reactive from their own form of insecurity. So what you've got is basically a bunch of children with no self-awareness, throwing a bunch of fears around at each other, slinging mud and going, my fear is worse than your fear. Don't like your fear. More comfortable with mine. Well, of course you are. Don't want to hear your solutions about God and Jesus. Nah, it's boring. I read Karl Marx once. He said it's an opiate. Yeah, well, you might be right, but where's your insecurity gone? Where's your core ontological dread gone? You've not dealt with it just because you've battered off a few arguments you don't like. It's still going to confront your soul, is life and death, and whether you believe it's God operating the questions behind life and death, your soul's going to get confronted. And no matter what Bible verses you quote as well, there are some examples of that, about the rich guy who built up barns, and he said, oh, what will I do? I've got all this money and I'm a bit, but I'll just tear down my old barns and build some bigger barns, because he didn't know what to do with his money. He got a bit bored. And God said, you fool, don't you know that tonight your life is going to be taken from you? So even when we try and anesthetize ourselves from these core fears and distract ourselves with money and, fame or whatever the hell it is, the questions don't disappear. We just refuse to look at them. But they're staring us all in the face. So ultimately, no matter what Bible verses you use, no matter what your frame of reference is, it's what am I going to do with my insecurity when it all goes down? When I finally stop breathing, curl up and die and go cold, what is there? And everyone's got an opinion. And, we're all just throwing that around. And ultimately, we believe we've got the ultimate answer, the final Russian doll, Jesus. Before time, outside of time, God creates, it falls, he enters into his creation finally, and then he dies for it, resurrected, returns to the Father. It's like a parabolic movement from start to end, and he comes back at the end and consummates it all. And somebody could say, nice story, don't believe it. Okay then, what are you going to do with your insecurity? And you could say, I'll be a Buddhist, I'll be a nihilist. We just die, this is just the end, that's it. Now, if it's going to go well, you just, make the best of it now. A hedonist could say, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And then it's like, well, yeah, kill a few people, drink some adrenochrome. I might as well drink the blood of these kids, because at the end of the day, there's no judgment, and it keeps me young. So I'll do an Ellen DeGeneres, So there's all kinds of moral positions then on that spectrum to justify doing what we do. But the bottom line is the ultimate in it. It's, what am I going to do with how I'm feeling? And am I going to run away from the mirror and run away from the truth and pretend I'm not going to die? Or am I going to face it and try and find some meaningful answers? I think that's about it, mate.
Well, I spoke to a friend last week, and I said, I never actually spoke to you about what you believe. I said, I know you'd been to church a few times back in the day. I said, you were looking. I said, what do you believe? And he said, well, I'd like to think, I hope that, when my time's up, that I've been, good enough to be able to be with my loved ones up there, which is, it's not what the scriptures say, but, he isn't a born-again Christian. He's still looking, still on his path. But what do you say? How would you approach that? Because that is idolatry, making the God that fits you best and not holding yourself to any standard, and not because of anything other than he lacks the knowledge. Because we all did. We were all groomed into this society, Alex. We're all fractured and disjointed. We were fractured. Some people were fractured much more than others. Some people have been damaged much more than others. And it just all seems to be a coincidence that it's been on absolute steroids for the last 100 or so years. And we've got to a pivotal point. I think we can see the vultures and the eagles gathering. So go on.
We all wear clothing, mate. It's funny in chat, I've just noticed. We all wear clothing, we present ourselves. At the Raconteurs report, he says, by the way, I'm Taylor. And that basically sums it up, because whenever we enter into the world in our roles and we speak to people through our roles, we're just a moving mouth with words coming out. We might be right, we might be wrong, but beneath the level of everything that we say, there's a human being with a soul, with a spirit, with a heart. And no matter what we say, we're only ever able to capture a small part through our aperture of the bigger reality. So even when we speak, we're speaking from a podium. We have the privilege of speaking on this show because you create that space for that. And we speak through a certain aperture, we have got a certain perspective. And people don't see all of us at that time, but we try and give them the best of us within a limited frame, talking about geopolitics, the modern world, ultimate spirituality. It's not all of who we are. So we operate these roles, and then we engage other people's roles. And Jung called it personas, engaging with other personas. But beneath it all, we've got to clarify who we are. So, he says, doesn't he? By the way, I'm Taylor. How'd you do, Taylor? Nice to meet you. That's the reality. We need to all take it at times our metaphorical clothing away and our coverings by which we hide from each other. And like we hid from God in the garden when we'd sinned and said, I'll be in the trees. It's too intense. It's too intense, this being real thing. So at the end of the day, the more real we get, the more authentic and honest, find our voice, speak our truth, because there is ultimate truth, but we have a personal truth as well, based on our experience. Speak your truth, your personal truth, come to the table, don't be afraid to have the discussion. And if you do that, at least we know you're alive. And it's when you don't do that and you sit on your hands, the world goes to hell in a handbasket. So we can do something about that, no matter what we ultimately believe about final reality.
And it does end up with, why do you believe what you believe? Have you seen this information? Where do you get that information from? Come and have that conversation, because I'm sure there must be some rabbit holes that I've not been down. So come and show some information, but don't expect people to just believe things, because I've seen people do it all my life. I can't just believe. If information comes up that should challenge your belief, it's common sense to go, I'd better have a look into this. A bit like when people say I can't afford to pay my bills. Well, do you think you should have a look into this? No. We've just got to keep going, pick our crosses up every day and try and do service of spreading the word that we know is the truth, the true remedy to this world, the only remedy. And all these other people that are creating all these issues say it's wrong. I think it's worth having a look at. That's all I can say, guys.
That's why we come back every week, Paul.
That's why we do it. So thanks to everybody in the chat room. It's been lively in there tonight. If you're watching this on replay after live, thanks for getting this far with us, and give us a like and a share and help us to spread the word to more people, not just the gospel, the remedy, but join the dots, look into these things. Don't just take our word for it. I didn't. I go and look at things. Do your due diligence.
Yep.
See you next week, guys. God willing. Good night. God bless.
See you later, guys. Have a good one.